Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on another episode of the Daily Ding U presented by BetMGM. I am Michael Beller, and if I turn my computer around, there's a window right here in front of me. You would see a gray, rainy day here in Chicago, but in my heart, it is sun shining, it is bright, it is happy, and that's because the NCAA tournament begins tonight with the first four and then begins in earnest tomorrow with the first round, and that's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Daily Ding U. I am joined once again by my co-host for Ding U, Brian Bennett. Brian, it was 710 days ago. I looked it up this morning. 710 days ago that Virginia beat Texas Tech to win the national championship in 2019. We have not had an NCAA tournament game since. Here we are. We have finally arrived with the first four starting tonight, and it just feels like this cloud's been lifted, and we are ready to get rolling and get excited about this NCAA tournament.
It is so wonderful. It is sunny here in Louisville, Kentucky, although it's probably pretty gray in Louisville Cardinals fans' hearts as this tournament gets started without him. But I got my big bracket behind me. I can't wait to start filling teams in on that, and just so excited that we got here. It didn't look like we would get here for a long time at points of the year, but we are here, and let's get it going.
Yeah, you're going to get to fill that in. I assume you've got like a blank spot for the first four or slashes, so you can at least circle teams tonight, and then
highlighters.
There you go. Yeah, highlight them or Sharpie them through, right? And then tomorrow, really start filling them in. And we're going to hope to help you start filling in some of your bets here for the first round today. And we're going to start right here off the top. We've got a handful of my and Brian's favorite games that we are going to talk about here. The first one, I mean, Brian, with what we've done the first two episodes of Ding U, could we start with any team other than Oklahoma State and their first round game against Liberty? That's exactly where we're going to start. Oklahoma State, 7.5-point favorites against the 13 seed Liberty. 140.5 is the over-under on this game. This was one you wanted to talk about. We have talked quite a bit about Cade Cunningham and this Cowboys team, how they finished the season, a potential Sweet 16 matchup with Aya DeSunmu and Illinois, and just what sort of anticipation there would be for that Sweet 16 game. Who you liking in this game? Why? I like that you didn't tell me in advance. You just said, I want to talk about this game, but who do you like and why?
I'm super excited to see Cade Cunningham in the NCAA tournament. Another situation where it didn't look like we were going to get that a few months ago, and now it's here. Oklahoma State playing as well as anyone down the stretch. And then a Liberty team that we've seen in the NCAA tournament the last couple of years have made some noise. They won a game. Earlier this year, they beat Mississippi State, beat South Carolina, played Missouri pretty tough, play a very slow pace. They play that Virginia-style defense. But although they've actually been better offensively this year than they have defensively, but some veterans like Darius McGee on that team. So there's a chance that this game could be close, but I just like Oklahoma State and the way they're playing. I like them to win this game by double digits, as good a mid-major as Liberty has been lately.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. You know, yesterday I really was finally able to go through and do my sweep and place my bets. You know, with all the work that's had to go into it, I never had that free hour to go and actually make some wagers. But I was able to do that last night, and Oklahoma State was among the teams that I did wager on. So we are of one mind on this one. Another team, actually, the very first bet that I did make involved this next game in the South region. We've got the number 3 seeded Arkansas Razorbacks, 8.5-point favorites against Colgate. And, you know, Colgate has been among the more popular teams that is being discussed as a potential upset pick. It started right away on Selection Sunday, right? Seth Davis on the CBS show talking about why he liked Colgate to be able to pull off this upset, and snuck it right in at the end before they called it a show there that he was picking Colgate to beat Arkansas. I love Seth. Seth knows a whole lot about basketball. He's very close to the game. We're going to have a little bit of a disagreement here, though. I just don't see how Colgate really keeps up with Arkansas's offense. You see the money line, and I think those are pretty fair prices. 161.5, one of the higher over-unders that we have. It reflects both the offensive efficiency of these two teams and the pace that we think we are going to see in this game. And I think that's really where this one gets away from Colgate. Colgate can be an efficient offensive team. They're not going to play at the pace, or when they are playing their A game, they don't want to play quite at the pace that Arkansas wants to play. And I think that's where they're going to get into trouble. I think they're not going to be able to force Arkansas out of its up and down offensive game. And so I like a team that is this sort of big favorite that we see from Arkansas that can play at the pace that Arkansas does, and just frankly is a far more talented team than what they are facing in Colgate. I trust this brand of team to not only be able to win, but be able to cover these 8.5, 9.5, maybe 10.5 point spreads because of the pace that they play at. So, Colgate, a fun team. I do expect this to be a fun game to watch, but I think it's one that Arkansas ultimately wins going away, and that's where I stand on this one. One of my favorite bets of the first round. Any leaning for you here on this one, Brian?
Boy, no respect for the team that's top 10 in the net here, huh? But yeah, Colgate's fun to watch, but it's one thing to run with Army and Boston U than it is against Arkansas. But, they've got a really good player in Jordan Burns. And let's not forget, a couple years ago, they played that really good Tennessee team in the first round, the one with Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield.
Right. I was at that game.
Yeah, lost by 7 points. So
yeah,
they are capable, obviously different teams, but they are capable of staying close. I just wonder, without having any kind of non-conference game schedule this year, that where they get into that strength and size of Arkansas, a very versatile Arkansas team, by the way, can play a lot of different ways. I just don't know that they may be a little shell shocked, especially at the beginning. So I'm with you. I think I like Arkansas on this as well.
Yeah, I was at that Colgate, Tennessee game covering it just a few years ago. And hey, that was the last tournament we had. And now we've got this one to cheer on. Let's stick in the South region for your next game that you wanted to pull up. The 4 seed Purdue Boilermakers, they are laying 7.5 against North Texas. We talked a bit about Purdue on one of our earlier episodes of Ding You, and we talked about them being this high floor, low ceiling team. Purdue doesn't feel like the sort of team that's going to falter because they basically play their game regardless of who the opponent is. They also don't feel like they've got this enormous ceiling to make a Final Four run this year. Maybe we're talking about that next year, but this year it feels like they are maybe just a year away from being able to do that. So when you look at this one, Purdue laying the 7.5, a 126.5 over under. What jumps out at you? What do you like?
Yeah, I was on an Indianapolis radio show this morning, and I picked North Texas to win this game outright. Which maybe not the right market to do that in. I don't think the host appreciated that very much, especially with Purdue being the only team from Indiana in the All-Indiana NCAA tournament. So I'm not sure North Texas actually can win this game, but they play a real grinder style. I think we talked about this on a previous show. Just how good defensively they are, top 25 defensive club. And I think they're going to be able to keep this pace kind of slow. Purdue, not a great 3-point shooting team. They do have, a couple snipers, obviously, but they've had games where they've been way off. North Texas with a little bit of size inside to keep up with Travion Williams. And I just like them to keep this game close and maybe keep it, in the 50s even. And then we could be looking up at 2 minutes to go and it's, one possession game. So that's why I like the Mean Green here.
All right, Purdue laying the 7.5. You're feeling comfortable catching those 7.5 on the 13 seed North Texas. One of the best wins that Clemson had all season was in the non-conference when they beat Purdue, and that's the next game that I want to bring us to. Is Clemson, the 7 seed, taking on Rutgers, the 10 seed in the Midwest region? It's actually the 10th seeded Rutgers Scarlet Knights that are favored in this one by 1.5. I like Rutgers. I'm leaning on Rutgers. We talked about this earlier this week. I like Rutgers to go to the Sweet 16. I think that they can take down a very strong Houston team in the second round. I think they match up well there. I'm not taking this Clemson game for granted. Obviously, they're going to have to earn their way to that potential second round matchup with Houston. But when I look at this game, I just look at the pairing of Geo Baker and Ron Harper on Rutgers' side of the ball. And it's one that I think really is going to be brought to bear against Clemson. The battle-testedness that every single Big Ten team is going to have, I think really is going to lift a team like Rutgers. And, Rutgers didn't have any major marquee wins in the Big Ten. They did beat Illinois way, way back at the very beginning of the Big Ten schedule. Not quite the same Illinois team then that we see now. No wins over Iowa, no wins over Ohio State, no wins over Michigan, but it's still a team that played very well in that tough Big Ten schedule. And for me, it does come down to those two players, Geo Baker and Ron Harper. When it's a game that is this close, when it's a game that is expected to be played at sort of a grinder pace, I do like to turn to the team that I think can find 1 or 2 players that can put the team on its back and carry them through. 1.5 is almost just asking you to win the game. Obviously, there's a window there where Rutgers wins and I lose, backing them at 1.5. But I still feel good that they're going to be able to cover that. So give me Rutgers. I feel good about this one. Probably my second favorite bet of the first round behind that Arkansas 8.5. Is there any lean for you in this, Brian, or are you staying away?
I'd probably lean Rutgers, but I'd tend to stay away from the 7-10 games just because those teams are so evenly matched. These are 2 top 20 defenses. But as you mentioned, the one thing I do like about Rutgers is they do have a couple guys, who can get you some buckets at the end of a game. I don't know where Clemson goes for that. And
Yes.
Clemson, losing to Miami in the ACC tournament, not a great look for them. So Clemson's got some really, really good wins this year, but they've also been very, very inconsistent. So that's one reason I'd probably stay away from this, because I don't know what Clemson team I'm getting.
All right. Thanks to those of you who are out there watching us live right now. If you have any bracket betting questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get to them. And if you're not watching this live, just a note, we are recording this on Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon in part of the country. So some of the lines may change by time you go to make your bet. So just keep that in mind if you are watching this late or listening to it on our Daily Ding podcast feed. And speaking of changing lines, who better to talk about that with than BetMGM's Jason Scott, VP of Trading at BetMGM. Jason's been joining us all week long here on Ding You and will be with us through the tournament. Jason, let's jump in. Let's talk about the first round. We know there are a couple of big absences. Davion Harmon for Oklahoma, Moses Wright for Georgia Tech. We know that those have affected the lines in those games. How significantly have they been affected?
Very significantly. That'd be two of the three biggest moves. Georgia Tech, Loyola, Chicago is sort of 9.5 down to 7.5. And what we are seeing with these games too is the totals are moving as well. That total has sort of come down, just looking at it now where it's landed, down to 124.5. We're seeing that with the injuries and also the COVID teams. So, for instance, the Kansas line, the Kansas spread total is coming right down, and the other one was, the Virginia, yeah, Kansas is 140. So Kansas 141 to 146. Iona, Alabama's the other big one, 143 to 148, and Virginia's 10.5 down to 7.5. So they're the games where we're seeing the big movement, where there's the known unknowns.
Yeah, that Georgia Tech line it's very, very surprising to me, even without Moses Wright. But which first round games are you generally seeing the most action on right now, Jason?
It's very surprising to me that we're seeing it on the number 1 and 2 seeds. We're seeing people happy to lay the big starts, probably with the exception of Baylor Hartford. The sharps there want to be on Hartford, but the public definitely want to be on Baylor. We're seeing a lot of interest in Illinois. The Rutgers game that you just mentioned, we're seeing money coming both sides there as well. They'd be the most in terms of tickets, obviously with the exception of tonight. There's the recency bias there that, UCLA, Michigan State is just off the charts. It's going to be, certainly our biggest number of tickets and dollar hold in any of the college games this year, past any of the conference finals. Wow. Significantly, not by a little margin either.
I'm one of the people who is involved on that, as we talked about yesterday, like in Michigan State laying the 2 points. Let's look beyond some of the games here, Jason, that have injury concerns or COVID concerns. Have there been any that have made major market moves that aren't involving a player who's not going to be there or a team that is in flux because of what happened with them last week in their conference tournaments?
Yeah, to be honest, it's the Rutgers Clemson again. That started 1.5 the other way. It's doubled. The total there is 128.5 down to 125. So that apart from that, it's the Baylor Hartford one again is very interesting. It's going up and down half a point or a point, almost on an half-hourly basis between 25 and 26.5. The pros want to be on Hartford, the public want to be on Baylor, and the lines, it's like a yo-yo. It's intriguing to watch.
Yeah. And speaking of that, have you seen any games yet where there's a stark divide between where the sharps are and where the public is going?
Yeah. Cal, Santa Barbara, and Creighton. The public are with Creighton, and the pros are just sort of nibbling away at the plus. That would be the biggest one for us.
Happy to hear that.
Has that changed at all what you've done with the line?
We unashamedly roll with the pros. They're the ones that move the market. These are the guys that are spending, they've got quants and they're spending millions of dollars and hundreds of hours on models and getting these things right across all the sports. And it's the best tool any bookmaker has is trusting these guys.
Yeah. We try to do what we can to follow them and trust them as well. And that's an interesting one that we're going to get into a little bit later when we have one of our Big East reporters on the show. But for the time being, we're going to say goodbye to Jason Scott, the VP of Trading at BetMGM. Jason, I know you got a couple of busy days coming up here, so get those lines in, get those lines moved however you want. And we'll be back with you over the weekend to talk about the second round.
Thanks, gents. Enjoy. Good luck.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much. We will happily take it. And right now you can take a very nice deal if you go register with BetMGM using the bonus code ATHLETICMM. Bet $1 and you win $100 when any of our picks at The Athletic win their first round matchup. Plus, we'll give you a free 1-year subscription to The Athletic so you can experience the absolute best coverage of the tourney and also of every single sport that you love. Go to BetMGM.com. Use the promo code ATHLETICMM when you sign up. It's a new BetMGM customer offer, paid and free bets. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. All right, Brian, let's keep things rolling here, and let's talk about some of these games that we do indeed have coming up. We're going to bring on CJ Holmes and Brendan Marks in just a little bit here, but let's you and me talk about some of these games before they join us. Villanova and Winthrop. This is one of the more popular games as a 12-5 upset pick, right? We've got Villanova as 6.5-point favorites in this game, 142.5 on the over/under, and it's a game that has become sort of the go-to 12/5 pick, and that's understandable because of what's happening with Colin Gillespie and his knee issue. But when you look at this game, are you on the 12? Do you feel better about Villanova? Do you think Jay Wright can coach them up and get them at least through to the second round where they would potentially meet the Purdue team you're talking about fading earlier? Or do you think that 12 seed is the way to go here?
Well, I've been on Winthrop for quite a while. Well before the tournament, I was picking Winthrop to make the Sweet 16, regardless of the matchup. Just really like this team, like the way they play. Now, it's not going to be easy. Even without Colin Gillespie, Villanova still has an enormous talent advantage here.
Right.
And, of course, one of Winthrop's greatest weapons is DJ Burns, the 6'9", 280-pound center who's just unstoppable in the Big South. But, trying to play a big against Villanova is often – pick your poison there. You may live with it and die with it. And he has not been very good defending pick and rolls. He's gotten a little bit better here. I actually wrote a story about that this morning. But I'm going to roll with Winthrop, at least with the line here. I think at the very least they'll keep it close, and I think they'll have a shot to win this game at the end.
It's only been 2 games, right, without Gillespie, but it just feels like they can't quite find themselves without their point guard, and that's understandable, right? I mean, Villanova is not the only team in the country that would be struggling to find itself without its starting point guard. So I can't really fault them for that. The committee did them no favors by giving him this matchup with Winthrop. Again, Winthrop, as you said, has had a very strong regular season, was going to be a very popular 12 pick. I think no matter who they were playing, no matter who their 5 was, if they were a 12, no matter who their 4 was, if they were a 13, whatever the first round matchup was. I mean, you hear my dog barking in the background. He's agreeing with me that this Winthrop team was going to be very, very popular, and it just feels like the right sort of draw to get them into the second round, and maybe another fun matchup with Purdue should that end up being the second round matchup that we get. Let's bring on a couple of our colleagues here at The Athletic, Brendan Marks and CJ Holmes. Brendan covering North Carolina and an ACC expert. CJ covering the Big 5 in Philadelphia, including Villanova, and our guy in the Big East for this show. Let's stick with that game for a second. Let's go to you here, CJ. We're just talking about Villanova and Winthrop and just how it's been a very tough go of it over these last couple of games for Villanova without Colin Gillespie. Jay Wright, one of the coaches in the country that we seem to trust basically implicitly. So how do they get back to being at least something resembling pre-Gillespie injury Villanova without him?
As players like to say in every single news conference this year, they just have to get back to playing Villanova basketball for a full 40 minutes, right? Villanova's had some bad breaks down the stretch. I mean, losing Gillespie, it's funny. Jay Wright was talking after that Creighton game after Gillespie went down, and he was like, Gillespie, he's our leader. He is our leader in every category. On the court, he's our leader. Off the court, he's our leader. Habits, he's our leader. And to lose that kind of leadership this time of the year is brutal. But, thankfully, Villanova still has enough healthy bodies to still be able to kind of get back to what they used to do. But they have to make shots. They go 2 for 23 from the floor against from 3 against Winthrop tomorrow night, then it's going to be a tough night. But, Chris Archidiakono has stepped in at point guard in Gillespie's absence. Although he hasn't been able to fill in for Gillespie in terms of from a scoring standpoint, he's been solid. And they're going to need him to continue to be solid. They're going to need Justin Moore to step up maybe a little earlier than they thought. They said that he was going to be their point guard going in the next year. And now they're going to need him to be that this year. They're going to need Jeremiah Robinson-Earl to play like Big East Player of the Year. They do that, they make shots, and they're going to have a chance against Winthrop. But it's a tough matchup. They're going to have to bring it.
Brendan, we've got some really interesting 8-9 games coming up. North Carolina, Wisconsin is probably the one that jumps out at most people. Not used to seeing those two names on this 8-9 line. Some underachieving for both teams. North Carolina seemed to have picked it up there at the end of the year. But how do you size up this matchup?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for North Carolina in this matchup, and no, UNC certainly is not used to being an 8 seed. They're not happy to be an 8 seed. Not happy to see Villanova across on the 9 line either. But I think the biggest thing for North Carolina is just playing within itself. This is a team that has a legitimate claim to have the best front court in the country. You're talking about Garrison Brooks. He's the ACC preseason player of the year. And then next to him is Armando Bacot, who's a 5-star recruit and started every single game as a freshman. And then 2 more 5-stars coming off the bench behind him. So UNC has size for days. Roy Williams basically rolls these guys out like a hockey line. The biggest thing is just getting them the ball. UNC has these 2 freshman guards, Caleb Love and RJ Davis, and they're both good at times. And RJ Davis is the reason they beat Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament quarterfinals. But if those guys aren't completing post-entry passes, if they're not dedicated to getting the ball inside and they're hawking up shots, and Roy Williams likes to call them crazy shots. I think he's being a little generous there. But if UNC doesn't get the ball inside, then it's going to struggle to score. It's going to struggle to run its offense, and Wisconsin's going to feast. So it really is that simple. UNC feed the post, and usually when that happens, good things happen.
Yeah, it's a game that definitely on my radar. You're just missing it out of screen above my head, but there is a little Camp Randall poster at Wisconsin above my head. Wisconsin grad. It's been an ugly season watching this team play and not be able to knock down shots. Very different team when they are making threes versus when they aren't. So it's sort of 2 sides of the same coin looking at North Carolina and Wisconsin offensively. CJ, let's get back to you and the Big East, another 5-12 matchup here. Creighton, the number 5 seed in the West region. They're 7-point favorites against UC Santa Barbara. We're just talking with Jason Scott from BetMGM. This is a very popular game where you have a lot of people coming in on UC Santa Barbara. This is a pick that we're seeing made in a lot of brackets, with the 12 upsetting the 5. A lot of that's got to do with Ja'Cory McLaughlin on UCSB. Creighton, though, can speed things up and make it uncomfortable for Santa Barbara. How do they best do that?
Exactly what you said. I understand the logic behind the 5-12 upset pick here, but I think this is a game where Creighton's going to take care of business, especially considering they're entering the NCAA tournament. They're kind of limping into the tournament after, getting blown out by Georgetown in the Big East final. So this is a team that has a lot to prove. But the thing about this Creighton team is, although they've been a little inconsistent down the stretch, offensively, they're still among, one of the best teams in the nation in terms of speeding up the pace and making 3-pointers and just putting a lot of pressure on opposing teams. They have one of the best point guards in the country in Marcus Zagorowski. They have one of the best shooters in the country, Mitch Baylock. And really, this team, obviously, they got to make shots, right? But I just think that this is a game where they should take care of business.
Still kind of like those gauchos, though. But great plays their game. It's going to be tough. Another 8-9 game that I love, Brendan. Loyola, Georgia Tech. We've seen this line is now shot up. I think Loyola is favored by 6, maybe 7 in some places. Of course, Moses Wright going to be out. You don't want to not have your big man against Cameron Krutwig, a 13 All-American, believe it or not. But how does Georgia Tech, which won the ACC tournament title, how does it adjust to life without Moses Wright in this game and potentially even in the second round?
Yeah, well, not well for starters. Moses Wright is, not to say he's Georgia Tech's only big man, but he basically is. If beyond him, you're probably talking about Rodney Howard coming in and playing the majority of his minutes. And Howard is like a 6'10" sophomore. He's averaging like 7.5, 8 minutes a game. So he is nowhere near the player that Moses Wright is. And I think the biggest thing for Georgia Tech too is not only is Moses Wright such an important player for them, but him being inside makes life so much easier for the guards that Josh Pastner has. And, Pastner, I think is a crazy underrated coach. I'm so glad if there's not a photo opportunity with him and Sister Jean, then we're doing something wrong. But I think the biggest thing about Moses Wright is that he opens things up for Jose Alvarado. He opens things up for Michael DeVoe. Both those guys shoot from about 40%. They're going to have to be a lot better than that. Alvarado's been a little banged up. He was barely able to win the ACC for them. The other thing about Georgia Tech is, yes, this is a team that won the ACC tournament, but to do that, they had to beat 13 seed Miami playing its third game in 3 days, and then beat a Florida State team that is by no means playing its best basketball right now. So it's not like Georgia Tech went through this Herculean slog to get where they are. And without Moses, right, I mean, it's just really difficult to envision seeing a situation, especially like you mentioned, Brian, against Krutwig. He's going to feast inside. I don't know if Alvarado and DeVoe can shoot them into this game.
Yeah, not quite the sort of ACC tournament championship run we are used to seeing a team have to make, and Georgia Tech now playing a little shorthanded against one of the more popular 8 seeds we've seen in a long time in Loyola, of course, just a couple of years ago. A lot of this same team making the run to the Final Four. CJ, we've got one more game for you here in the Big East, and I'm just putting it together that the Big East is involved in every single 5-12 game. Here we have another one. This time the Big East team is the 12 in Georgetown, also a team that went from totally off the tournament radar. If you look at any of our colleague Eamon Brennan's bubble watches leading up to the tournament, there is no Georgetown. They go from totally off the radar to in the dance, and now a chic 12-5 upset pick against Colorado. If they do that, how do they pull it out? Let's say someone comes back to you, CJ, from the future and says, guess what? Georgetown won. Now you fill in the blanks. How did they do it?
This is actually an upset that I like. When the NCAA tournament rolls around, you want to be playing your best basketball, and that's exactly what Georgetown's doing right now, fresh off that magical Big East tournament run with Patrick Ewing at the helm. How you win this game, Colorado's a team that likes to get out on the break. They have a great point guard, I think McKinley Wright. He's a great player, and he's a guy that controls the pace for them. So how do you win this game? You use your bigs down low. Georgetown has some really good bigs. You bang the ball in the post, you control the pace, and you take advantage of your opportunities. They do that. That's how we win this game.
I'm just realizing I think I picked against every Big East team except for Uconn.
Hate the Big East. I've known it all along. You hate the Big East.
I love the Big East, but I think it's kind of a down year. But, speaking of another game, 7-10 game involving an ACC team is Florida, Virginia Tech. Right now we got Florida -1, and boy, I have no feel for this game, Brendan. 0. I don't know what to make of either of these teams. They've had some good wins. They've had some bad losses. What do you think when you look at this matchup, how it's going to be decided?
Yeah, I actually really like Virginia Tech, like a lot. I think that they have a chance to sort of go on a run here in the NCAA tournament. I think that, Mike Young is ACC coach of this year for good reason. I mean, he is a guy who took a team last year that was undersized. Landers Nolly was there, sort of a ball hog, didn't really share the ball well. And this year they have just completely embraced his style, and he's a really creative offensive guy. And some of the sets they run to get guys open are just awesome to watch. I think the biggest thing for Virginia Tech is they also have a big man finally. They have Keve Aluma who comes over, and he's a second-team All-ACC guy. I mean, he's one of the best bigs in the whole league this year. They're going to need him to be more productive than he was in the ACC tournament against UNC. He shot 4-13, 9 points, and that was one of the main reasons why Virginia Tech ended up losing that game. But they have so many good, interesting guards around them. And the thing that I really like about Virginia Tech, the stats won't tell you this. I think in adjusted defensive efficiency, they're sort of middle of the road, like in the 50s. They are so aggressive. I mean, they get in the way of passing lanes. They press you. They're so physical. I like Virginia Tech a lot. I think there's some money to be made here on this line. But I also think, just generally speaking, the Hokies are a team that, if not for COVID pauses, we'd be talking about them a lot more than we have.
It definitely could be the case. And if they do end up making that run you're talking about, they would have to include most likely a second-round victory over an Ohio State team that nearly won the Big Ten tournament and has had itself a very strong season. CJ Holmes, Brendan Marks, thanks so much for joining us, guys. Enjoy this weekend. We have definitely earned it.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we are just rounding third and headed for home on this episode of the Daily Ding. You see a Cardinals thing behind Brian and a Cubs thing behind me. You know we got to throw at least a little bit of a baseball reference into the show. Please, and we still have some time to take questions, so if you do have any that you want us to get to, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we will get to them. But for now, we will bring on another one of our colleagues here at The Athletic, CJ Moore. CJ joined us, of course, on our tournament preview and talked about some of the teams he liked as being able to maybe make Final Four runs, Elite Eight runs, what have you. This time, CJ, we're just going to talk about teams that you like in the first round and games that we haven't yet talked about. So let's jump into the Midwest region where the 6-11 matchup pits San Diego State as 3-point favorites against Syracuse. 138.5 is the over-under in this one. CJ, I asked you yesterday, give me some games. Give me some games you like. I want to get in. I want to dig in with you on games that you like. This was one of the list you gave me that also jumped out at me. I am wondering if we are on the same page here. So who you got in this game and why?
I've got San Diego State.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, as somebody who hates his own defenses, I've long been somebody that doesn't love Q's, so there might be a little bias in this. But since 2011, got a little stat for you. Since 2011, San Diego State has been a favorite in the first round 5 times and won all 5. Aztecs are a good 3-point shooting team, 37.5%. They've been solid against zones this year, 1.01 points per possession. And they're a good rebounding team. Syracuse is not. And are we sure, guys, that the ACC is like very good this year?
No.
I think we're sure of the opposite, to be honest. I think if we're sure of anything, it's that, right?
Yeah, I think the ACC is kind of garbage this year. So congratulations, Syracuse. You beat up on some mediocre ACC teams. You didn't lose too many bad games. And you're in the tournament, but you're going home early. I think the Syracuse zone is always really dangerous in a second round game or a Elite Eight game. But I think when you have some time to prepare for that zone, you're in a little bit better spot. So I like the Aztecs. Am I on the same side as you, Beller?
Indeed you are. And it sounded like Brian as well.
Oh, 100%. I think San Diego State is a really difficult team to zone. They play 4 guards, a lot of good shooters. And I still don't know how Syracuse is not in the first 4. They have one quad one win, and that was against NC State. So I don't know how you get an 11 seed by with that. But anyway, let's move on to Uconn Maryland. I've seen a lot of people pick this on different sides. Some people like Maryland's defense. Some people love the way Uconn is playing. I'm pretty sure you're on Uconn here, CJ. Tell us why.
Yeah. You know, probably a little bias on my side again because when I've tuned in to watch Maryland this year, they've looked like garbage. So, you know, I haven't got the Terps on a good night, I guess. But a few more stats for you. Connecticut, 16-5-1 against the spread this year. And with James Bouknight, don't know if you've seen him play, but he's pretty good, right?
Pretty good.
So 11-2-1 against the spread with him in the lineup. Connecticut is 16 at KenPom. This isn't your typical 7 seed. Like, you know, Bouknight missed, I believe, 8 games this year, if my math is right, and it probably isn't. But, you know, that's a team to me that's like, what would you say, Bennett? You've been doing the bracketology stuff all year. If this was a healthy team all year, what do you think? 4 seed?
Maybe 4, maybe a 5. The Big East was all down. But, you know, when you see Creighton as a 5, I think that's probably their ceiling.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's more like a 4 or 5 seed. Maryland went 5-9 against tourney teams this year. 2 of those wins were against Michigan State. Maryland's relied on 3-point shooting. Huskies are good at limiting threes. And I'm on UConn. Like I think UConn might advance to the Sweet 16. I like them to get past Bama. So I'm riding the Huskies. Give me 3 points. I think they can cover that.
Alabama has been a popular Final Four pick. Seems like no one wants to take Michigan, and everyone loves the other 1 seed. So you're looking for a way to diversify and not have a Final Four full of 1 seeds. And you're seeing Alabama as the team selected quite a bit out of the East region. I agree with you, CJ. If Alabama runs into trouble for me anywhere before a potential Elite Eight matchup with Michigan, Florida State, whoever it might be coming out of the top half of that region, I'm more afraid of Connecticut because of James Bouknight than I am maybe Texas in the Sweet 16 or someone like that. So I like Connecticut here as well, a bet that I made last night. Let's throw things into the top part of that region. Just mentioned Florida State, not only a popular pick to advance at least to the Sweet 16, but we're seeing a lot of people pick them over Michigan, pick them into the Elite Eight, maybe even the Final Four. They've got their first-round matchup against UNC Greensboro. We've got an 11-point favorite for Florida State, 144.5 on the over-under. Again, we have a lot of games that are in this range, 10.5, 11.5, that are really interesting because some of these dogs are pretty good, and maybe you don't think that they're going to win, but can definitely stay within the 11. You are indeed backing UNC Greensboro here. What gives you the confidence they can stay at least within arm's length of the Seminoles?
Yeah, the ACC is probably going to have 4 Final Four teams because I am fading the heck out of the ACC. But Florida State turnover prone. UNC Greensboro is really good at forcing turnovers. Greensboro didn't play any high major teams this year, but last season they did. They lost by 12 at Kansas, which was a game that I believe I attended. And, that KU team was the national title favorite, if you remember, right? So impressive performance there. And then lost by 3 at NC State, who was a projected tourney team. So, Greensboro's good. Isaiah Miller is a dude. He's a fun Brian, I'm guessing he's one of your favorite little guards in the mid-major range in the country, right?
Absolutely. So much fun. He's a smaller John Morant who can't shoot.
There you go. How are you going to bet against a smaller John Morant? So also let me throw you out, Southland is a really good league. Brian, you can also back me up on that, right? The Southland the last handful of years has been awesome. We all know Wofford a few years ago. So the Southland last 2 tourney appearances, Wofford beat Seton Hall by double digits in the first round. And then in 2018, Greensboro, as a 13 seed, loses by just 4 to Gonzaga. So I like, having that many points here. I think this is a good situation to be in. Yeah.
Well, just to make sure it's SoCon, not Southland, so people don't yell.
Sorry. I'm on Stephen F. Austin's in my head. SoCon, Southland. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. I don't want to hear people yelling at me. So,
good catch there. Good catch there.
Another game seems like you like is and it's pretty bold considering where you live and what team you mostly cover is Eastern Washington covering against Kansas. I'm assuming you're not picking Eastern Washington to win outright, but what is it about this matchup that's catching your eye?
Well, Kansas is just in an awful situation. It's less about Eastern Washington, which opened the year with 2 3-point losses against Washington State and Arizona. So has shown that it can play with some high majors. But this is more about KU. The Jayhawks ride David McCormick. And it's hard to say he's going to have a big role in this game or play a lot of minutes. He's been in COVID protocols. He just returned. He will return to the team on Friday. So he'll get 1 day of practice. I asked Bill Self yesterday, has David McCormick been doing anything to stay in shape? Well, no, he can't. He's just hanging out in his room. So I'm not sure how much he's going to play. And so what has KU done this year when McCormick has struggled or when he's been out, in the Big 12 tournament? They went small, right? Who's the guy that they go small with at the 5? Jalen Wilson. He's out. Got COVID. Next small ball 5 option. Who's that? Tristan Enaruna. He's out. So the other thing that caught my eye here is KenPom projects it as an 11-point win for KU. And I'm assuming KenPom, his system doesn't know, hey, these guys are going to be out, right?
Right.
So I'm kind of surprised this line is where it is. It hasn't adjusted more based on what's going on with Kansas.
Watch out for Tanner Groves at Eastern Washington. Pretty good big man there.
Yeah, he can shoot. He can really shoot it. I know, right? They got several guys who can stretch it, and I think KU is going to win. Bill Self will figure out a way, but I like the points here.
Yeah, it's not a small number sitting at 10.5 and could be a very tough matchup, even if Kansas is able to get past Eastern Washington, whether they're looking at the Wichita State Drake winner or USC. That could be, pretty much no matter which of the 3, not the easiest one. And USC, particularly with Evan Mobley, would present Kansas a very tough matchup if those 2 teams do end up meeting in the second round. Let's move on to the West region, where I think this is maybe the most popular upset pick that we've seen in people prognosticating all week long. The number 13 seeded Ohio Bobcats taking on Virginia. Virginia laying 7.5 in this game. And Virginia, just like Kansas, another one of those teams, CJ, bowed out of the ACC tournament because of COVID. They have not been able to practice really at all, or at least they haven't been able to get together as a team. Meanwhile, Ohio comes in very hot. We know what Jason Preston can do. Catching 7.5, I mean, that feels excellent to me. And this is one where the money line intrigues me as well. I know you're on the 7.5. Do you like the money line too?
Yeah, I'd make a little wager on that, I think. I mean, Virginia, like Tony Bennett, betting against him is really makes me nervous. But at the same time, like I'm fading the ACC, and Virginia's in a terrible spot. And the KenPom line here is 7. So like, why is this 7.5? Like, we're probably dumb to be betting this because Vegas is like telling us something that like I can't understand. Can you guys get why this is 7.5?
No.
It's a name brand. It's still a name brand in Virginia. Yeah. And as you say, I mean, Tony Bennett, like people like backing established, proven coaches with all this time to prepare. So I don't think this is necessarily an unfair line. But I look at Ohio and I see a guy in Jason Preston who can just put a team on his back. And that's so often the narrative when we're talking about a 13 seed pulling an upset, a 12 seed making a Sweet 16 run. It's having that one player who can go out and get you 30. And we've seen Preston do it against not only a high major, but the best of the high majors in Illinois early this season.
Yeah, put 31 on those dudes. And like, what do you got to do against a pack line, which Illinois pack line team? You got to be able to hit threes. And Ohio's been a good point shooting team this year. And, I mean, any coach you talk to this season who had to deal with a COVID pause, and when they come back from it, they're like, the first couple days of practice, not very good. Well, guess how many days of practice Virginia gets? 1. Like,
yeah. I
mean, I think this is a terrible situation for Virginia to be going in this game. Tony Bennett is a freaking god, so who knows? But I just, I'm pretty happy with getting any kind of points here.
Yeah, definitely has the feeling of a game where the 13 seed is going to be very popular, not only with the 7.5, but perhaps on the money line as well. That is CJ Moore, one of our colleagues here at The Athletic. CJ, thanks for joining us twice this week. Thanks for doing some heavy lifting with us here on Ding U. You know we're coming back to you next week again, so rest up, enjoy the games, and good luck this weekend with these picks here.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
All right, and with that, Brian, I think we're going to tie a bow on this and call it a show. Any last words as we get ready for the first 4 and the first round tomorrow?
Just everybody enjoy it. Pace yourselves. It's going to be a long day. You're out of shape for this. It's been 2 years. Some teams I love that Ohio pick. I love North Carolina. Let's do this.
Let's do this indeed. It all gets started this afternoon with the first 4 and then the first round tomorrow. We're back with you again here on Ding U on Sunday when we will take a look at the second round in full. Brian and I, of course, available on Twitter if you do have any questions for brackets as we get ready to wrap things up here with that or with first round games. I am at M. Beller. He is at G. Brian Bennett, to CJ Holmes, Brendan Marks, CJ Moore, and Jason Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. For Brian, I'm Michael Beller. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy all the games this weekend. Good luck with all of your picks, all your bets. We'll be back with you on Sunday. Talk to you then.